Hello, everyone. This is You and You Perspectives. Today, we're talking about a country that is both our neighbor and our rival, India. News of Modi's upcoming visit to China has drawn quite a bit of attention in both countries. But behind it lies decades of grievances and entanglements in China-India relations. Today, we'll take a closer look at India's foreign strategy, its historical baggage, and why I say India is a credit-bankrupt country. It's now confirmed that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit China from August 31st to September 1st to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. In India, this has been heavily publicized, but the motives behind it are telling. It turns out Trump has recently stopped giving India face. He's demanded that India stop buying Russian oil and even threatened to slap tariffs of 25% or 50% on Indian goods, a major blow to India's economy. India, after all, has long been accustomed to shearing the wool from Russia since the Soviet era, right up to the brink of the USSR's financial collapse. India was still extracting benefits. After the Ukraine war broke out, Russia became even more generous toward India, which sees a chance to buy cheap Russian oil and resell it for a profit. Why did Trump suddenly turn on India? Simply put, India is too weak. The U.S. had hoped India could help counterbalance China in the U.S.-China rivalry. But in the recent India-Pakistan clash, India suffered a major defeat. Pakistan, using Chinese weapon systems, scored 6-0. The U.S. realized India can't even counter Pakistan. So how could it possibly contain China? So Modi turned to the China card. By loudly announcing his visit to China, he's essentially sending a coy message to Washington. Push me any further, and I'll cozy up to Beijing. Interestingly, he's timed his trip to avoid China's September 3rd military parade, flying home right after the summit. What does that tell us? India wants to use China as leverage, but has no intention of getting too close. A classic fence-sitting strategy. When talking about China-India relations, we can't ignore the 1962 war, a complete disaster and humiliation for India. On October 20th, 1962, after enduring repeated provocations, China launched a counteroffensive. The Indian army collapsed almost immediately. In just 1 month, China had won decisive victories on 2 major fronts, with 7,000 Indian troops killed, wounded, or captured. Panic in India reached such extremes that after Bondela fell on November 18th, the government abandoned Tezpur. Indian Army Chief General Thapar advised Prime Minister Nehru to evacuate Assam and set up defenses on the Siliguri plain. New Delhi was gripped by fear. Officials prepared to flee the capital. Banks began burning currency, and the wealthy fled overnight. In a moment that was both tragic and absurd, Nehru, in desperation, wrote to the U.S. asking for 12 fighter squadrons and modern radar systems. He personally handed the letter to India's ambassador to the U.S., laying bare India's sense of hopelessness. Why did India lose so badly? Several reasons. Its military was overconfident, assuming that, in Ladakh, a few shots would send the Chinese running. When China did strike back, India was completely unprepared. More critically, the war exposed a fundamental flaw. The Indian military was kept far from the decision-making center, forced to obey civilian orders that ignored battlefield realities. That problem remains unsolved to this day. Some Chinese scholars have called India a beggar imperialist, and the term is spot on. What does it mean? India's very existence as a state came about because Britain's colonial grip weakened. It essentially picked up its independence. Despite its colonial past, India fantasizes about having the capabilities of the British Empire, but in reality has only the confidence of a beggar. This mindset comes from deep history. Around 1500 BC, the Aryans invaded India to preserve their nobility and purity. They created the caste system to separate themselves from the natives. That hierarchy became ingrained in Indian culture. After independence, India inherited Britain's colonial strategic thinking. British Viceroy Curzon once said, India's central position, great resources, and vast population enable it to exert significant pressure on Persia, Afghanistan, Tibet, and China. Independent India's leader Nehru fully embraced this India-centric vision, saying, "India cannot play a secondary role in the world. It must be a great power or it will be nothing." The problem is India has the ambition, but not the strength. Since 1947, it has fought with every neighbor. Against major powers like China, it loses and then plays tricks, illegally occupying southern Tibet and refusing to return it. Against small countries like Sikkim, it annexes them outright. Against medium powers like Pakistan, it stirs trouble endlessly. This militarist mindset is reminiscent of Germany and Japan in their aggressive eras. In global business circles, there's an unwritten rule: never trust an Indian partner. At the government level, India's reputation is equally bad. In 2017, it passed a law to impose retrospective taxes on foreign firms, meaning profits you made in past years now had to be taxed under new rules. That's state-sponsored robbery. Many foreign companies have seen profits in India slashed by bizarre legal maneuvers, with factories and land seized outright. Chinese firms like Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo have all faced inexplicable fines and frozen assets there. In private trade, seasoned exporters know that over 90% of Indian buyers are likely to default. The usual scam: pay a deposit, get the goods shipped to India, then refuse to pay the balance. If you try to collect, they'll drag things out with endless excuses. That's why in international trade, the unspoken rule is, with Indian buyers, demand 100% payment up front or don't do business at all. Their credit is just that bad. This culture of dishonoring agreements runs from the bottom to the top. Every time there's a border skirmish, India agrees to terms and then breaks them, launching attacks instead, only to be beaten back and then deny it happened. Most recently, when Pakistan shot down an Indian fighter jet using Chinese weapons, India sent politicians abroad to lie about it, claiming they'd won. Looking ahead, 3 fundamental obstacles stand in the way of better China-India relations. 1. The territorial dispute. India illegally occupies 90,000 square kilometers of Chinese territory in southern Tibet and refuses to return it. This is the biggest deadlock. Without resolving it, relations cannot truly improve. 2. India's militarist mindset. Chinese analysts have said, the PLA isn't truly worried about the Indian army. We've beaten them before and can do it again. But India refuses to accept defeat, always seeking chances for revenge. The Doklam standoff in 2017 and the Galwan Valley clash in 2020 stem from this attitude. 3. India's deep-rooted pro-Western bias. Its elites study in the West, its tycoons emigrate there, and even its scammers prefer to target Western countries. Every time India picks a fight with China, it looks to the West for support. Such a country is unlikely to be genuinely friendly with China. In short, China-India relations are much like China-US. Relations, they'll never be too good, and they'll never be too bad. India wants to play both sides, seeking economic benefits from China while joining the West to contain it. China, for its part, will remain both cautious and engaged. The relationship will likely continue in this stop-and-go fashion until one day things break down completely and perhaps another conflict erupts. History shows that with countries like India, strength is the most effective language. The lesson of 1962 is one India should not forget. That's all for today's program. The complexity of China-India relations goes far beyond what we've covered, but one thing is certain. When dealing with an ambitious yet untrustworthy neighbor, we must remain vigilant. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.